We recommend daily backups at the minimum across all of your systems. So that's your Office 365, your server or your SharePoint data, your OneDrive data, Google Drive data, all of that needs to be backed up on a regular basis, at least daily, in my opinion.
Welcome to today's podcast. My name is Raj Karen. I'm joined by Greg Brainerd. He's the CEO of Braintek out of Houston, Texas. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Raj, thank you very much for having me.
Hey, today we're going to be talking about ransomware, and it's a topic that many businesses don't realize how critical it actually is. And so let's start by discussing what ransomware is. Greg, could you summarize what that is for us?
Yeah, so ransomware really is the some person or bad actor is holding some of your files for a hostage. And so the way that they do that is they somehow get onto your system, whatever method they happen to use. Then they take your data and they change the format so it's encrypted. And they have to use a security key to do that. And then so in order to unlock your encrypted data, you need that security key. And of course, if you don't have that, then you're now at the whim of this person that's done this to you. And often they are extorting you for something, generally money. So they're going to say, hey, in order to unlock your files, you need to pay me some kind of a fee, whatever that happens to be. And they normally want that in some kind of untraceable, like a Bitcoin or digital currency of some type. And then they'll send you an email or they'll leave you some kind of a message on the screen. And then at that point, with some instructions on what to do. And that's typically what ransomware is, and hence the name ransomware, holding it hostage.
Let's go into some quick information for a company that might have just gotten hit by ransomware. So if somebody sees that they're locked out of their systems, what's the first thing that you recommend they do?
Well, the first thing is they need to contact whomever is handling their IT and get them involved. At that point, we need to start trying to figure out, what the source of the ransomware was from. So that may have been your computer. It could have been someone else's computer in the organization. So tracking down the source of that is going to be important. Once we identify how this person got into your network, or if they use some kind of just malware to do it, and we find the source, then we start cleaning up that machine and getting, resetting passwords potentially, locking that ransomware or the person out of those systems. Once that's completed, then we can start remediation of restoring the files. Now, there's a couple of different caveats here, Raj, because once they have your data, often, even in addition to encrypting that data so you no longer have access to it, they may have made a copy of it somewhere else. So then they could again hold you hostage and say, hey, look, if you don't pay me this ransom, I'm going to release this data to the public on the dark web. So there's that option, and so then you're kind of under pressure to try to do something. The FBI recommends against paying the ransom and contacting your local authorities to get them involved as well. In addition, you may be under some kind of compliance, which dictates that you may need to let your clients or customers know if their data was part of this. And of course, going back to your IT person that's going to be handling the removal of the malware, getting the person out of the system, trying to figure out what kind of impact there was, and then of course restoring any of your data. You're going to have to determine what type of data was affected of this. So, do you have social security numbers or credit card information? Do you have any other personal identifiable information on your clients? Is there some kind of proprietary information that you use in your company, like maybe blueprints for a manufacturing facility, or whatever the data is, that you need to be cautious about what that impact may be to not only your business, your clients, and or customers, or to the general public in general.
This could be very devastating to a small business. Do you have some examples of Houston area businesses that were impacted by ransomware?
Yeah, so this company came to us after they had already been infected, and their network was down. They were using an IT guy that he actually went into the hospital. He was very sick, and so he couldn't help them any longer. Uh, So, anyways, they thought that they were protected and that he was handling a lot of this security or backups. And in essence, they really didn't have enough security to stop it, which is how that happened in the first place. And then secondly, they didn't have backups in place to then go back to. Uh, they were a small. I think they were about 15-person company delivering passports to individuals, uh, and the bulk of their server data was unrecoverable as a result of this. Being that we had a lot of unrecoverable data, we found what we could recover and copy that off to a different source, and then we had to just reset up their server for them from scratch. They had to recover their business of the lost data by going through old emails or just recreating it from memory or just saying, sorry, I can't recover that data. Luckily, one of their main applications was hosted in a different place on the server that wasn't accessible by this attack, and we were able to recover that, which was the bulk of their business transactions. And so that was very lucky for them. But not everybody's so lucky, Raj. If something like that happens and all of your data is gone and you can't function as a business, I mean, it could be very devastating to your company, putting you out of business potentially. So it's very imperative that you have backups and good security in place.
And I think a lot of times small businesses may overlook the fact the earlier point that you made about these thieves posting your data, which could be your client information, sensitive client data, on the dark web, which means now because of that security breach that you've got, your clients could actually be affected, which then could create lawsuits and all kinds of other stuff that's more than just a small headache. So ransomware protection in Houston is really something that small businesses have to pay attention to. Um, w- what are some of the common ways that these hackers actually penetrate a small business's network?
Well, there's going to be quite a few different methods to doing that. So but one of the biggest ways is phishing. So they're going to send you a phishing email to start off with, and they're not going to necessarily do it to you specifically, but maybe a very widespread multiple person attack where they just send out to thousands of emails, and they're going to say something to the effect of, "Hey, your Office 365 password is expired. In order to keep your access, click here, type in your password, and you'll be fine." And so maybe an individual or two will click on that email, type in their username and password, and then sometimes you've got that multiple factor authentication code that you need to type in. If you end up typing that in, now they can get into your account based off the information you just gave them. So that's one method. Of course, if they're more localized, they may be able to hack in through your Wi-Fi. They could use exploits on machines that are unpatched. So if you're using a Windows 8 or a Windows 10 machine that doesn't have all of its security patches, and there's a patch out there, of course they could get on that way. If they send you an email that has a link to some kind of malware software, so let's say that you click on this link, it's supposed to give you some free coupons to some website, like Amazon or whatever. You click on that. Nothing really happens on your computer. You don't see anything, but it goes ahead and installs some kind of malware onto the machine, and then does whatever it's going to do. So any of these types of methods where someone could get onto your computer and start loading the software or encrypting your data, that's going to be the different sources. And of course, there's more than that can actually happen too, Raj.
So we've actually got a really nice discussion that we had on an earlier podcast about phishing, and an article available on the Braintek website. So for anybody who's looking, that's a great reference to point to. It's got lots of extra details on phishing attacks. So unpatched software, that's something that a lot of people just sort of think that they don't necessarily need to do. I know that I see that in lots of discussions I have with people, and they're running several operating systems behind on their Macs or something like that on their Windows machines. So that's another penetration area where people could kind of sneak in, and then of course those weak and reuse passwords. So how does a small business evaluate whether they've got everything locked down properly? How do they know how good their security is?
Well, it's going to be security is a multi-layered approach to keeping your business secure. So There's going to be a lot of different things. So first of all, having, again, your systems patched. Microsoft and Apple release patches on a regular basis for their machines, their operating systems. And so keeping those on those automatic schedules, rebooting your computer regularly to make sure that those patches do get applied the first basic step. That's free. There's nothing that you need to really do except let it do it. It'll even come up and remind you, hey, there's a patch for Chrome or for Adobe or whatever. And so let it go through those processes so it updates your software, reboot when it's finished. And I know it's a little pain sometimes, but go ahead and do that. Other things are to have some good security software on the machine. So antivirus is not enough nowadays. You need antivirus. Another software that's really good for the computer is called MXDR, which is managed detection and response, and the X is for extended networks. And so what that does is that's actually monitoring for hacker behavior. And that could be the same behavior that a network administrator is doing as well. But it's just looking to see what kind of things are happening. So if I try to, let's say, remote into your computer and we're on the same network at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to kind of flag that and say, well, that's kind of odd. Greg doesn't normally try to remote into Raj's computer at all, let alone at 2 o'clock in the morning. And that's a big red flag. So someone at that point is going to start looking at that and seeing if that's malicious or not. Some other things that we need is some employee training. So this is going to be how staff knows how to respond to certain things, what to look out for, and just keeping them abreast of any of the latest security problems or trends that are out there. Having some good anti-phishing is going to be very good so that on your email system, making sure that some of those links that are coming through from phishing emails or just where they're sending those malicious links at all in general in email are going to get stopped at that level so it doesn't even get to your inbox. If someone, let's say, compromises your password, they can check that stuff up on the dark web because it's posted there. So having unique passwords for all the various different websites that you visit. So my Facebook password, my bank password, my email password are not the same, and they shouldn't be. But all too common, we see people that have that same password combination shared across 50 websites. The problem is if one of those gets compromised, they all get compromised. So it's very easy for me to go, oh, look, I just got Raj's Facebook password. Let me see if that works on Office 365 or his G Suite. Oh, it does. And now I've got access to that. So or maybe it works on the VPN connection, so I can get into your corporate VPN if I can figure that out. There's a lot of these different security tools that really need to be in place to stop from different angles and different points.
So, as a managed service provider in Houston, one of the things you do is a security assessment. So, when a client comes to you, perhaps for emergency ransomware help or for just making sure that nothing happens to them, so preventive planning, you go in and do that type of security assessment and just go through a bulletized checklist of things that they need to make sure that they have locked down.
Absolutely. We actually use a third party tool, Galactic Scan from Galactic
Mhm.
Advisors. And what it is it does a security scan of your machine to start with. And then we can also do it against your Office 365 tenant and make sure that things are locked down in both places. And from there, depending on what kind of things that we see, it's going to come up and tell us, oh, your hard drive is not encrypted. Well, that's not necessarily a big deal unless my laptop gets stolen or is not in my possession. Um, oh, I don't have the security patches. We already discussed that. So I got to make sure I'm doing all those patches. Oh, I'm sharing passwords between multiple websites. It'll or you're saving passwords in your local browser. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the browser isn't very secure at storing passwords. And again, if I get access to your machine, I can get that file and I can crack that and I can get access to a lot of your passwords. So keeping them into a third-party password manager is a great idea as well. And it checks for other things on your machine, like if your firewall is enabled, and if not, what ports are available to get into. Again, that goes back to if I haven't patched my machine and I have these firewall ports open, then I could potentially exploit that computer through the various exploits that may exist on it. So keeping them patched is very critical, and then closing down unused ports. Some kind of applications. We've seen that Microsoft Office, for example, can be exploited to get into different parts of your server. We use application whitelisting which is a software kind of like a security bouncer at a nightclub that will say, hey, if you're not on the whitelist, you can't get installed. So with those kind of softwares, we could really block a lot of that stuff as well. But the security tool will go and look at a lot of these different areas, tell us, hey, this is what's missing on this particular machine. And then we go, of course, test multiple machines across the network to see if there's patterns or problems. Another one is having a local administrator account that may be the same password across multiple machines. So if on your machine, your local admin password is the same as my computer's local admin password, well, that means that I can use that password to get into multiple computers across the network. And if I can do that, then other machines are also at risk, even if your security is a little bit better on your machine compared to mine, if we have that same password. So it's very critical to have not sharing passwords between systems or your computer systems or your websites, and having these other security tools in place, and then some monitoring. And then the last thing I forgot to mention, Raj, is that backup. You need to make sure that we have that backup in place, because if something does happen and my files are wiped out, deleted, encrypted, whatever, I can at least go back to my backup and start restoring those files.
Let's talk about backup for a little bit, for a moment here, and go a little bit deeper, because that's one of the often overlooked things. Sometimes people might think, okay, well, I did a backup, and maybe they do it once a month, maybe it's once a week. But what's a good backup plan look like that creates a good ransomware protection plan?
It's really going to be dependent upon your business and what those requirements are. For like you just mentioned that I can have a backup for, when that happens once a week, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's more often, maybe daily, or maybe hourly. Or it could be that I just look and go, hey, I just need backups every so often, where I just kind of do it when I need it. So it
Mhm.
really depends on your tolerance. The big question is how long or how far can your business go if you don't have that data? If all of a sudden your QuickBooks data was wiped out and you no longer had it, well, that means I probably can't invoice my clients very easily. I don't know what I'm invoicing my clients for at this point. I don't even know who my clients are. So, at that point, it's stopping me from the ability to generate invoices and make money. So that's going to be a problem. So you want to make sure that that data is backed up probably all the time, maybe daily. But the business is going to have to dictate that. For us, we recommend daily backups at the minimum across all of your systems. So that's your Office 365, which by the way does not do backups by default. So that's your responsibility. Your server or your SharePoint data, your OneDrive data, Google Drive data, all of that needs to be backed up on a regular basis, at least daily, in my opinion. And in some times where it's more critical, maybe even hourly. And then secondly, if you really require those systems to be up and online all the time, it's good to have some kind of standby equipment waiting, or just sitting there in the event. So let's say that you have a critical server running your ERP software. If that system is so critical to your business that you can't operate if it's down, then having a secondary server with a restored copy of your backup sitting on it in the event that I need to spin that up. So, for example, let's say that that server crashes or gets a malware event or whatever. I can shut down that server. I can power up the other server, start my backup, and I am back in business within maybe a couple of hours. And that might be the type of recovery that some businesses need. And it just really depends on your business, how critical that data is to you, and can you operate without it. Those are going to be, once those business questions are answered, we can craft a more eloquent backup solution and restore system that's going to work for your business. But I would make sure that daily is a minimum.
And when you say you do the backup, you also do test restores to make sure that everything's in place. Because sometimes I've heard of situations where someone thinks they're doing the backup just fine, an incident happens, and they cannot actually restore because the backup actually wasn't being done correctly. So you verify that too.
Absolutely. There was a company. This was a large architecture firm that's here in the Houston area. They had a large amount of data that they were thought was being backed up. They had a fail-safe redundant server in place, but nobody was checking the backup to make sure that that was actually happening. They were getting reports that the backup was, actually completing, but part of the data that they were needing was missing from that set. And if they had done a couple of test restores, they could have said, "Oh, I need to make sure that wasn't that's not in my backup set. Why didn't it show up in the recovery? And so at that point, you need to go back and go, what happened with that? Is it not selected? Was there a problem with the backup? Whatever the answers are, but you need to get that resolved before you need it during, your restore time.
And it's interesting that the examples that you shared are small companies. They're not, these Fortune 500 companies who have big IT teams. They're also targeted, but small businesses are really the ones that get hacked quite often because I think that these hackers know that they don't always have these types of protections in place. So that's one of the key things you got to watch for. Um,
We've even seen, a disgruntled employee leaving the company. They're getting fired or whatever, and afterwards they logged back in and they're trying to get things out of email, or they're trying to sell those passwords on their own to the dark web. It's not just the malicious unknown hacker that sits in a basement somewhere, or some guy out of Russia. I mean, you've got bad actors here that are happening, that are doing these kind of activities as well all the time. So
mm,
keeping those protections in place are going to be tremendous. But in that particular example, the HR department needs to let the IT department know, hey, we let that guy go, and that we can go disable those accounts and make sure that
mm.
that person no longer has access to the system as well.
Very important, critical factor for business process. You touched on training. Let's go into training a little bit more. So, how crucial is employee training? Because it almost feels like, oh, it's a bit of a headache. Oh, I got to do it again this year. There's all these resistances that kind of come up when you're doing employee training, but you sort of have to include that as part of your ransomware protection plan for Houston area companies. Can you talk to that for a moment?
Yeah, so we use a network security awareness training. It's a monthly email that goes out to all of the staff members that are subscribed to it. And it's got a little few minute, just a 2 or 3 minute video that it kind of goes over some topic, like, hey, when I'm VPNing into the network from outside the network, here's how I do this. I need to make sure I've got two-factor authentication turned on for my critical accounts. uh, what do I do when I'm using the free Wi-Fi at the hotel? All those types of different topics that are surrounding security, and they help educate those employees so that they know how to handle that particular type of event. At the end of the video, it's got a short little quiz that they can take to make sure that they just understood the video, and if they don't, of course, they can go rewatch it or whatever. And those happen monthly. And then we also, and this is unrelated to network security awareness, but this is with phishing, where we send out simulated phishing emails. And those emails are trying to test the users. Now, those are at random times throughout the month, and they're all a little different. So yours might be from, a fake UPS email, where I might get a fake Apple email saying, hey, something's going on with my iCloud. Now, I'm not an Apple user, so immediately I'm going to look at that and go, well, that doesn't apply to me, and I'm going to ignore it. But if I just got ordered a package from Amazon that's being shipped on UPS, I might go, oh, crap, I need to pay attention to that. So it's very important that employees are just paying attention. They're all very busy. They're all smart people. But, some of them just click on these links. We see it all the time. And so it's just very important that they keep up with the security awareness training and those phishing emails, so that they are just they're on top of the latest and greatest security threats that are out there.
I like that you do that every month and throughout the month as well, because some companies will just do training once a year just to check a box and say, okay, we did our training. Everybody begrudgingly goes through it. But you're actually taking a much more proactive approach where you're creating this habit for people to just constantly be vigilant so that they do protect themselves from a ransomware attack.
It's also good to just keep an eye on the news. I know technology news is not everybody's thing. I definitely read technology news all the time. And so I'm reading about all kinds of security threats that are happening to large organizations, or the FBI might release some just general information about some kind of threats. I just ordered some pamphlets from the FTC that are going to be some new FTC safeguards that we can hand out to people. And these are things that are common scams that small businesses are falling for. And so we want to help educate our clients and community so that they can, be on top of that.
Yeah. Very insightful conversation, Greg. I think we covered a lot of topics on how to protect your business from ransomware. So whether you're inside Houston or the surrounding areas, one of the top managed service providers that can help you stay free from ransomware and protect your data is Braintek. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, Raj, they can just give us a call at 281 367 8253. Of course, they could just visit our website at braintek.com, or they can email me, greg at braintek.com. Any of those methods would work fine.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you, Raj. You have a great day.
You too.